was once home to one of the world's greatest natural wonders. The Goliath Falls, a thundering series of 18 waterfalls straddling Brazil and Paraguay, which roared so loudly that it could be heard from over 30 kilometers away. By sheer volume, it was one of the largest clusters of waterfalls on Earth, its flow rate twice that of Niagara Falls. A major tourist magnet, Goliath Falls boasted a near-permanent rainbow arching over its mist, outshining even the famed Iguazu Falls nearby in terms of raw spectacle. Become 1982, it was no more. The Brazilian military obliterated it, leveling the entire rock face and erasing its ancient foundations, swallowed by a vast man-made reservoir. Today, that reservoir powers one of the most spectacular engineering marvels of the modern world. The Itaipu hydroelectric dam stretches nearly 8 kilometers across the mighty Parana River, a monumental paradox. It stands as a triumph of human ingenuity and at the same time, an ecological tragedy. As the world's second largest producer of hydroelectric power, it offers a cautionary tale for conservationists. It represents a shining feat of binational cooperation, yet continues to fuel fierce political tensions between Brazil and Paraguay. This isn't just a dam, everyone. It's a technological, civilizational juggernaut. It has sparked outrage among many.
Today's episode sponsored by our friends over at Surfshark. Look, the internet remembers everything, but Surfshark is how you make sure that it doesn't remember you. Surfshark is a VPN that encrypts your internet traffic, it hides your IP, and it keeps your data out of reach from advertisers, from data brokers, from your ISP, from whoever is watching. It also blocks ads and malware with a feature called Clean Web, and it lets you connect through multiple countries at once using multi-hop for extra security. And unlike most VPNs out there, one subscription covers every device you own. There are no limits, there is no nonsense. Plus, look, you can use it to hop over to another country and enjoy another country's Netflix selection or whatever your streaming service of choice is, which is very nice. Go to surfshark.com/mega or use the code MEGA at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN for free. And now back to today's episode.
The roots of the Itaipu Dam project stretch deep into the fraught history of Brazil and Paraguay. In the 1960s, Brazil was hurtling toward an energy crisis. With its economy expanding at a blistering 10% per year, its population expected to surge from 70 million to 170 million by the millennium, the country was desperate for more electricity. There was one clear solution. Brazil contains 10% of the world's fresh water, making hydroelectricity the future. Extensive geological and hydrological surveys identified Itaipu, a narrow gorge on the Parana River, South America's second longest, as the ideal site. It met all the criteria: sound water pressure, solid bedrock, and a natural bottleneck perfect for damming. Yet a small complication remained: Paraguay. Historical grievances with its landlocked neighbor, roughly 21 times smaller than Brazil, loomed large. Since the end of the devastating War of the Triple Alliance from 1864 to 1870, in which Paraguay lost vast portions of its territory and population, the country had been extremely sensitive to any perceived encroachment by its northeastern neighbors. A previous proposal to divert 60 kilometers of the Parana's course had already met fierce Paraguayan resistance, with critics citing the border ambiguities left over from the 1872 peace treaty. Through prolonged diplomatic pressure and the temporary military occupation of the area near the falls, Brazil succeeded in convincing Paraguay to jointly harness the hydroelectric potential of the falls along their shared border. Despite its initial hesitation, Paraguay eventually could not ignore the benefits: a diplomatic resolution with Brazil, the opportunity to consume and monetize its share of any electricity produced, the modernization of its economy, and enhanced geopolitical leverage. Fast forward to 1973, and after several years of extensive negotiations, surveys, designs, and planning, the landmark Treaty of Itaipu was signed. The construction and management of the dam would be overseen by the newly formed company Itaipu Binacional, jointly owned by Brazil and Paraguay. Both countries agreed to split the power 50-50. However, given that Paraguay's domestic energy demands were only a fraction of Brazil's, it was arranged that any surplus electricity not consumed domestically by Paraguay would be sold to Brazil at preferential rates. With funding secured largely through Brazilian loans, the world's largest and most powerful hydroelectric project was officially greenlit. Preparations for the dam. As we move forward, the staggering scale of this project is going to become unmistakably clear to you. Step 1 was temporarily reroute the world's 7th longest river. No biggie there. The plan was to divert it from its centuries-old course in order to dry out and reveal the future dam site. The diversion channel itself was an engineering marvel, the largest ever constructed. 2 kilometers long, 150 meters wide, 90 meters deep. With operations commencing in 1975, it took 3 grueling years of excavation, explosives, and just brute force to complete it. The process removed 50 million tons of earth and rock from the gorge. By October 1978, the concrete diversion canal was complete, flanked by 2 arch dams built to protect the canal from flooding. Then on October the 30th, at precisely 8 a.m., dynamite charges at both dams were detonated simultaneously. In just 3 seconds, the dams gave way and the river thundered into its new channel. To completely dry out the dam site, coffer dams were constructed on either side. These colossal rock structures were heavy and tall enough to divert the Parana's flow entirely. By April 1979, with the riverbed exposed, dam construction could finally begin in earnest. But let's backtrack a little bit. Even before this moment, other preparations are already in full swing. To generate massive, consistent energy output from the plant's turbines, the natural flow of the Parana simply was not sufficient. Engineers needed to create a massive artificial reservoir behind the dam. This reservoir would store huge amounts of water, ensuring a steady and controlled torrent through the turbines. The key feature was the reservoir's height. The higher the water source, the greater the drop, meaning more force to spin the turbines and generate power. It was determined that an area roughly twice the size of Chicago would need to be flooded for the reservoir, with water reaching depths of 100 meters. Entire villages and farms would be submerged, and the inhabitants displaced in the process would be compensated. Thus began history's most exhaustive real estate evaluation. Military helicopters conducted aerial photography missions, meticulously mapping every single square kilometer of the Parana Valley. But this was child's play compared to the events on the grounds. Armies of surveyors and photographers flooded the region, visiting every single home, farm, and business. They documented every detail: property size, condition, location, compiling an exhaustive inventory complete with photographs. In total, 40,000 people were displaced and compensated ahead of the Great Flood. Brazilian and Paraguayan authorities purchased nearly 8,500 homes in the valley, costing the modern equivalent of over $500 million, in addition to the nearly $20 billion allocated to fund the entire dam project. The real estate evaluation alone took 4 years. Now, some of you might be wondering about the fate of the local wildlife. As a reflection of the era's environmental priorities, just 17 people, mostly volunteers, were tasked with scouring the region to rescue as many animals as possible. The initiative was fairly novel for its time and heavy on propaganda, but as we'll soon discover, it was tragically light on effectiveness. Regarding the construction workforce, hundreds of thousands of laborers, mostly from Brazil, needed housing. The nearby town of Foz do Iguaçu, once an unremarkable backwater, suddenly transformed into Boomtown Central. An entirely new community sprang up almost overnight, complete with schools, hospitals, churches, parks, even a brothel to accommodate the influx of workers. One major engineering challenge arose early on. The riverbed at the gorge was only 50 meters deep, half the depth required to generate the calculated power output. To compensate, engineers needed to build secondary dams to raise the water level. This work began in 1975. Also raised at great expense were earthfill and rockfill dams that flanked the main concrete structure. These were built to seal off lower-lying sections of the terrain where the reservoir would otherwise leak out. By May of 1982, after preparing the groundwork for mass evacuation, constructing the secondary and auxiliary dams, drying out the construction site, and following an unforeseen setback, stabilizing an entire swath of crumbling rock bed, the Great Dam was finally ready to rise. The main dam and power station. The Itaipu complex is centered around a gravity dam, a self-supporting structure rather than one carved directly into the rock. To resist the immense force of the water, the dam had to weigh a staggering 61 million tons, roughly the equivalent of 6,000 Eiffel Towers. Its design economized on concrete and accommodated power-generating equipment by employing a hollow structure consisting of 18 concrete blocks. Each block, cast separately within massive steel frameworks, stood at twice the height of London's Big Ben. A workforce of 40,000 people worked on the dam in relentless 12-hour shifts, 360 days a year. To supply the 12.3 million cubic meters of concrete needed, 6 gigantic concrete plants had long been on operation. In 1980 alone, yearly production reached 3 million cubic meters. This was in addition to 4 rock crushing centers, 2 on each bank, with a combined capacity of 2,430 tons an hour. And that wasn't all. Since massive blocks of concrete are useless if not properly cooled, especially under the blazing South American sun, 2 giant cooling plants were built to chill every ounce of concrete used in construction. Their combined cooling capacity was equivalent to over 50,000 domestic freezers. And to keep up with this cooling demand, 3 colossal ice-producing plants were also added. Meanwhile, 7 aerial cableways transported the concrete to the dam site, spanning 1,300 meters of cable and carrying the material in 8 cubic meter buckets. In a manic race against the clock, the dam was finally completed. By October 1982, the sluices of the diversion channel were secured shut. The moment had arrived for the big flood. In just 14 days, an estimated 1,350 square kilometers were flooded, including 700 square kilometers of forested land. The area was submerged to an average depth of 22 meters and reached up to 100 meters near the dam. Upstream, the once mighty Gara Falls had been dynamited and leveled to ensure safe navigation in the future. Tragically, months earlier on January 18th, an overcrowded 50-meter footbridge at the site collapsed under the weight of visitors seeking one final glimpse of the falls. 40 people plunged to their deaths. And misery, well, it loves company. During the flooding, a team of over 300 conservationists launched a last-ditch effort to rescue the approximately 30,000 animals stranded in the flooding zone. Despite their best efforts, most of the animals perished beneath the rising waters. Meanwhile, hundreds of former residents displaced by the dam's construction gathered along the banks, watching as the waters lapped at what had once been their homes before eventually swallowing them whole. This included members of the 688 families of the Ava Guarani indigenous people who were forced from their ancestral lands due to expropriation. With the reservoir filled, it was time to install the generators in the main dam. Manufactured by a consortium of international companies, including Siemens and General Electric, each generator towered 27 meters high, equivalent to a 9-story building, and weighed an impressive 6,600 tons, almost as much as 3 Boeing 747s. Transporting these colossal machines to the site was a logistical mega project in itself. Giant tubes funnel water to the turbines, where a rotor spins magnets with a copper coil to produce electricity. Each turbine boasts an immense capacity of 700 megawatts. Between 1984 and 1992, 18 generating units were installed, with 2 more added in 2007, bringing the plant to its full capacity of 14,000 megawatts. The turbines were evenly split between the 2 nations, 10 operating at 50 Hz, the utility frequency of Paraguay, and 10 at 60 Hz, Brazil standard. Electricity is transmitted via lines connecting the plant to 2 nearby gas-insulated substations, one on the dam's right bank in Paraguay and the other in the bustling border city of Foz de Iguaçu in Brazil. High-voltage transmission towers carry power over 1,000 kilometers to Brazil's megacities, São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, a distance equivalent to 2.5% of the Earth's circumference, by the way. And so what is the outcome of this remarkable setup? Well, a simple plant has generated more energy in history than any other, over 3 billion gigawatt hours since 1984, enough to power the entire world for 43 days. In 2016, Itaipu set a world record for annual power generation by producing 103.1 million megawatt hours. That amount is equivalent to the energy consumed by Paraguay over 11 years and by Argentina in just 1. Given these numbers, it's no surprise that Paraguay has historically used only a fraction of its allocated Itaipu energy, between 2 and 10% of the dam's total output, although this figure has increased in recent years. That said, this modest amount supplies nearly 90% of the country's total electricity consumption. Meanwhile, Brazil uses its full share, with Itaipu contributing around 19% of its total energy needs and 25% of São Paulo's, home to the country's industrial powerhouse. So what happens to the energy that Paraguay doesn't use? Well, this brings us neatly to the heart of perhaps the longest-standing controversy and diplomatic saga surrounding this dam. David and Goliath. Now, under the terms of the 1973 Itaipu Treaty, any energy surplus had to be sold exclusively to Brazil at reduced rates. This arrangement transformed tiny Paraguay into the world's fifth-largest energy exporter, even though its primary customer was its powerful neighbor. For many Paraguayans, this issue has long been a sore point. They argue that the nation was saddled with an unfair treaty forged by unelected and frequently corrupt military dictatorships. As one of South America's poorest countries, Paraguay was, for decades, prevented from selling its surplus electricity at market rates or fully capitalizing on the dam's economic potential for domestic development. Meanwhile, Brazil reaped the benefits of electricity priced well below market value. One critic characterized Paraguay's share of Itaipu as an oxygen tank in the form of subsidies to large multinationals in Brazil. Meanwhile, between 1985 and 2012, Brazil consumed, on average, 93% of the dam's output. Eletrobras, Brazil's national electricity utility, purchased Paraguay's share for roughly $10 per megawatt hour and then resold it domestically for prices ranging from $20 to $60. Another point of contention concerns the exact amount of debt Paraguay owed to settle Brazilian loans. Due to Itaipu's status as a binational entity with its own treaty, diplomatic status, and legal framework, the project operates under a distinct legal basis. As a result, the debt calculations were never officially audited. Independent investigations have shown that as early as 2013, Paraguay had effectively paid off its debt, even though an estimated total of $79 billion was ultimately paid in 2023, an event that sparked the renegotiation of the country's treaty terms. Now, at the time of this video's release, these negotiations are ongoing. Under a previous agreement, Paraguay secured a 15.4% price increase for the energy sold to Brazil, raising rates from 16.71 to 19.28 per kilowatt hour, though this figure falls short of Paraguay's initial demand of $22.6. Now Paraguay has obtained the right to sell its energy directly to third parties as well as to Brazil's private energy sector, ending the long-standing monopoly of Eletrobras. This new market flexibility could boost Paraguay's annual revenues by $600 million by 2026. Brazil, however, maintains that the original treaty stipulated that Itaipu Binacional would sell energy only at cost, without profit. Still, the deal is widely regarded as a win-win. Brazil is no longer responsible for covering additional plant costs, while its private sector enjoys lower energy distribution expenses. In this way, Itaipu serves both as a triumph of binational cooperation and as a long-standing source of geopolitical friction between two unequal economic powers. Over the past 2 decades, Paraguay has experienced rapid economic growth, outpacing many regional peers, thanks to a favorable investment climate, technological innovation, a young and well-educated workforce, and abundant natural resources. Paraguay began 2024 with the highest GDP growth rate in Latin America. This newfound economic strength has shifted regional dynamics, prompting Brazil to view Paraguay as a more equal partner in trade and diplomacy. With the rise of energy-intensive industries like crypto mining and green hydrogen production, Paraguay is expected to fully exploit its share of Itaipu's energy, not just as a source of government revenue, but also as a driver for its own industrial growth. Currently, Paraguay remains highly dependent on fossil fuels for its energy needs. However, a favorable renegotiation of the Itaipu Treaty could allow it to better leverage the dam's potential for green energy projects. Ongoing negotiations are, therefore, focused on striking a balance between Paraguay's push for fair compensation and energy sovereignty and Brazil's need for stable, cost-effective electricity. Other pressing concerns include the long-term maintenance costs and the impact of climate change on the dam's output. Challenges such as droughts and a compromised biosphere near the dam further complicate the situation. These issues will shape Itaipu's role in South America for decades to come. And as a final note today, on the socio-environmental front, the dam is a divisive project. Its construction flooded vast areas of land, uprooted entire communities, and devastated countless forms of wildlife. That said, it also ushered in an era of cleaner energy for the region by preventing millions of tons of CO2 emissions that fossil fuel plants would have produced. Today, Itaipu stands as a cornerstone of both Brazil and Paraguay's renewable energy ambitions. In a world grappling with climate change, Itaipu is a prime example of a project in which profit-making aligns and indeed depends on environmental responsibility. Ongoing large-scale reforestation initiatives near the dam aim to restore fragments of what was lost, particularly indigenous land and displaced communities. They seek to rebuild ecosystems and capture vast amounts of CO2 emissions. Yet one might cynically ask whether these efforts would be as ambitious if they were not also destined to benefit the dam's efficiency, ensuring water quality and preventing soil erosion. The dam has always been, first and foremost, a testament to human ambition, human ingenuity, an era-defining megaproject that tamed a mighty river and redefined an entire region. So it comes as no surprise that it is counted among the 7 engineering wonders of the modern world. Itaipu was truly ahead of its time. The binational relationship that governs it has experienced its share of turbulence, yet stability now appears to prevail, and it must. After all, the world's 3rd largest dam sits on their borders, and it's not going anywhere. As for the river that fuels it, well, that's a story for another time. Thank you for watching.